I figured out if I put 21 inches of water on, what kind of yield am I going to have on corn to equal what my grain sorghum did? I had to go up to 275 bushel corn at same price with 21 inches of water to where it got approximately to the same dollars per inch of water that I got with my grain sorghum. Now, let me ask you another question. How many of you from Dalhart? I'm going to ask two questions. Nobody from Dalhart. How many of you raised 275 bushel corn then? How many of you raised 250 bushel corn? I don't care what year. How often do you raise 250 bushel corn? Every year, every other year, every third year, once every 10 years? My sorghum data has been consistent the last 5 years. There's some hybrids in there that 5-year average is 166 or 7 bushel. So if we do that, I've still got to be at 275 to equal the same price per acre inch of water. And I know that there's some weed control options with corn that you don't get. Corn's easy to raise. Corn's sexy to raise. I've got guys in north central Oklahoma. They like raising corn because it sounds sexy to be known as a corn farmer when you've been raising wheat all your life. It's not sexy to be known as a grain sorghum farmer. It really isn't. But if you can't figure out, I'm kind of opinionated. But I thought the idea of farming was to make money. And the sad part is in north central Oklahoma, right now sorghum is 50 cents over the price of a bushel of corn in Enid. Okay, how many of your seed companies come to you and talk to sorghum? How many of your seed companies come talk corn and try to get you to buy corn? Yeah, and I'm not bashing corn companies because they're usually the same one. But the next time you think about that, who's the corn seed company work for? Does he work for you or does he work for his shareholders? I'd probably get back to a certain company and I may make some people mad. I better be quiet. All right, so we'll move on. So how are we going to better utilize our water? No-till, I'm a huge believer in it, especially dry land. If you're farming dry land or limited irrigation, if you're not no-tilling, you're probably costing yourself money. It reduces evaporation. We got that soil shaded. The main thing is, in this part of the world, the wind don't ever blow here, does it? You know, unless the old rumor I heard, unless the log chain's sticking out like this, the wind ain't really blowing in the panhandle. Well, we had one of them days the other day. But if we can keep the wind off the surface, we can also reduce evaporation. So therefore, if we reduce evaporation, when we get them quarter-inch rainfall events, we're going to save some of that moisture in the soil. And to show you that we do that, a little bit, if you're looking at irrigation, strip till's not a bad option because it's a good combination of no-till and conventional till. You get that good seed bed to plant into. Everything we do irrigated on our research station is done strip till. Everything we do dry land is no-till. I've done a lot of research dry land and I'm not convinced it's going to work dry land. You can do it with some timing management, but I'm not going to get into that a whole lot today. If you are going to think about doing strip till dry land, you either need to do it immediately after, if you're in that wheat, sorghum, fallow, or whatever rotation you're in, you either need to do it immediately after wheat harvest to try to get that strip dries out is what happens. I've the 3 or 4 years that I did some strip till work, that 1 year I had about a 25 or 6 bushel yield difference, but I had an 8 bushel difference in test weight. Because what happened is the strip till and the conventional till showed drought stress, maturity got delayed, and we got hit by a freeze. The no-till stuff, when they had matured, had 58-pound test weight. The stuff that was in strip till or conventional till had a 50-pound test weight. So there's where a lot of our yield loss was on dry land. And I'll show you some of that data. This is a long-term no-till versus conventional till data from up at Goodwell. Basically, my data shows the same thing that they had out here at Bushland, at Tribune, Kansas. If you're in that wheat, sorghum, fallow rotation, it takes a while before you start seeing the benefits of no-till. And I love this slide because it shows you that no-till is not a silver bullet. When it doesn't rain, you're not going to grow anything. And I don't have last year's data on there, but I'd have another silver bullet explanation down here because I didn't even get sorghum planted last year. Never had the moisture in Texas County to plant it. But every year since then, I have at least been 15 bushels higher with no-till grain sorghum versus conventional till grain sorghum. Think about that. 15 to 20 bushels, and most of our rainfall events come a quarter inch at a time or less. So I've got to be saving some of that water because that's the only way. I heard somebody say it. Water is always a limiting factor. I've got to be saving some of those rainfall events that I'm not saving if I'm in conventional till. That's what it boils down to. This was a little bit of strip till work I did. Again, same yield difference. Strip till is right in between. It's about halfway between conventional till and strip till. Strip till is a very good option if a producer don't want to jump off and say, hey, because no-till's scary. I tell guys that thinking about no-till, the first thing you got to do is get a hobby. Take up golf, well, I would say fishing, but it's kind of hard to find any water out in this part of the world to fish in right now. So take up golf, play cards. I mean, that's the reason Kingfisher County farmers like raising wheat and grazing cattle. I'm a long ways from home now, so I can talk bad about them. They can put cattle on a wheat pasture in November and check them that morning and be at the bar drinking beer and playing pitch that afternoon. I guarantee you, if you want to go find a farmer in Kingfisher in the winter and the afternoon, I can tell you right where to go. It's called the Hitch and Post Bar, right on the east side of Kingfisher. There'll be 1-ton pickups with bale forks on them scattered all around that bar. So, but guys don't like jumping into no-till because it's scary. I've had guys say, well, the chemical cost. Guys do not. I got a producer in Cimarron County. Well, that tractor and sweep plow is paid for, so I can pull it all I want. By God, it's costing you something to run that tractor, pay manpower, and pull that sweep plow. You know, if a farmer, the way I do it, farmer needs to see how much it's costing him to run a piece of equipment. Check out what the rental rate, local rental rate is, and that's what you need to charge yourself. So, but no-till guys are a little scared to jump into, but it pays. We'll just put it that way. So I showed you these results earlier. Like I said, grain sorghum is a crop, guys, and it will respond like a crop when you treat it like a crop. Nutrient requirements are basically the same as it is for corn. Depending on who you talk to, it's somewhere between 0.8 pounds and 1.2 pounds per bushel of yield goal. That trial, those results, we had 200 pounds of N down. Had 57 in the soil test, and then we applied 150. Oops. And at P&K, just like anywhere you soil test, what I recommend for limited irrigated grain sorghum is you want to seed somewhere around 65,000 seeds because you basically want 50,000 plants per acre. I've done a lot of seeding rate work. I went from 50,000 to 200,000 here several years ago at 7.5, 15 and 30-inch rows, and there wasn't 5 bushel difference between any plot out there. After 7 or 8 years of seeding rate research, basically you want about a head and a half per plant is what you want, dry land or irrigated. So that trial I planted it on June 1st. We harvested it at the end of October. Fertility, like I said, we had 207 pounds. We had to apply 40 pounds of P, and I did apply 5 pounds of starter fertilizer. Our pH was 7.8, so JR, we was talking back there earlier, 7.8 sorghum will work. One thing I will say about where that location, that soil had been fallow since the wheat harvest of 2010, so we did have a full profile when we started. So we irrigated on June 15th, and that was mainly to get our herbicide activated. The 21st and 25th, we basically put an inch of time on. That's about all we could put on at the time. We re-nozzled. We're getting another irrigation well drilled here in the next couple of weeks, so we're going to be able to do a little better on that next year. We are going to start a study looking at drip irrigation this fall, corn versus sorghum. We're going to simulate 4 or 5 different well volumes. We're going to start at 150 gallon per acre, 300, 450, 6, and 750. Look at water use efficiency between corn and sorghum and see where that point is that you're probably better off raising sorghum than you are corn. You've already seen these numbers. This is the one I kind of wanted to show you. This came out of the Modern Grain Sorghum Production Handbook. They claim at about 20 inches of water you can raise 150 bushel sorghum, and then it levels off, which all crops do. They get to a plateau. These numbers that I've got the arrows at, these are the last 4 years. This is the average of anywhere between about 30 and 45 different sorghum hybrids. Something from 58 days to mid-bloom up to 74 days to mid-bloom. And these are all limited irrigation. We've never put over 10 inches on any of these trials. 2008 and 10, we were basically right on their line. The last 2 years, we've actually been above it. So I kind of think that line, with some of the newer genetics, I think that line actually goes up. One of the complaints I hear producers say sometimes about sorghum, well, the genetics are not there for yield. Well, the genetics are not there if you don't put fertilizer on. I guarantee you, I've had arguments with my cohorts and fellow workers from Texas to Nebraska on nitrogen rates on sorghum. I think there's a whole lot more guys out there under fertilizing than over fertilizing. So, I'll just kind of leave it at that. I might get myself in. How many of you have ever thought about trying to rotate with grain sorghum? Anybody? Surprisingly, I put a study in when I first got out there. I know our corn yields wasn't very good these first couple of years. We had one year in 2002, if you'll remember, it was dry. 2001, we had some well problems. We was about halfway through the season. We had to get a new irrigation well drilled, just like you guys go through every now and then. So, but the thing is, I just threw this corn sorghum rotation in for the fun of it. I just wanted to see if under a high yield environment like we've got under irrigation, if that, the corn and soybean, we know there's a rotation effect there. We can increase corn yield. It's been reported from Minnesota to Kansas. So I wanted to see if it would do it under irrigation, because everything I'd ever seen was under dry land. Well, we found out it's there. Surprisingly, if I rotate corn with sorghum, I get the same yield increase as I do rotating with soybeans. Shocked me. Asked me to explain it and I can't. The only thing that I can make a somewhat educated guess at the reason for, most people don't realize, a sorghum plant has twice the root mass as a corn plant. Think about that. There's twice the root mass under a sorghum plant as there is a corn plant. That's the reason it's so much more efficient in its water use. Corn breeders will tell you, I'd have the perfect corn plant if I could take the root system off of sorghum and put it onto a corn plant. Now, whether they're ever going to get there, I can't tell you. And I've got just enough breeding background to get myself in trouble. But guys, there is no magic drought gene. Think about that. Roundup was easy. BT was easy. It was one gene. In plants, you're talking about 30 to 50,000, or wheat plants, you're talking about 190,000 genes. You do something to one gene, one over here does something completely different when you turn this one or turn it off. And after last year, I think they need to be working as much on heat tolerance as they do drought tolerance. So, but if you look at the 3-year average, these numbers in parentheses are the percent increase that we got in our corn yield compared to corn on corn. So that year it was 36%, 13 or 14. So roughly we averaged somewhere around 20% yield increase by rotating corn and sorghum. So if you've got some of your lighter water, plant half the circle to corn, plant the other half to sorghum. Rotate them, because the benefit's going to be there, same if you use planting soybeans. So with that, I hope none of you ever have that instance. Got a producer in Cimarron County that says John Deere needs to change their slogan to nothing runs like a deer to nothing burns like a deer. So with that, I may get myself in trouble again. I'll answer any questions anybody's got. At least I made you laugh, if nothing else. You'll probably remember that.